Hola! Thank you for joining me for another installment of Astrology versus Psychology. I'm Nikki DeCaster with 11th House Publishing and Phoenix Rose Astrology. And today we're taking a look at erectile disorder and maybe a little bit into the female arousal disorder, the equivalent of. And so it should be very interesting. It's a highly stigmatized, highly hidden part of society. But from what I can gather, and the data is a little spotty on this, it's something like 20% of the male population suffers from it at some point or another. And so we're going to take a look at the astrology of why that might be and why it may come and go. There's a fleetingness to this, and how it might help people, get to the root cause of what's going on. So I'm joined here today by Sarah Castaneda.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And she's the author of?
I'm the author of Underdog Bet, and it's a book of poetry. It's coming out this year. And so yeah, and then on Authortunities, I'm the editor of Fantastic Euphrastics.
So thank you for joining us. And we're also joined by Stephen Schwartz. And Stephen, tell us a little bit about you. Oh, your mic, Stephen.
Sorry about that. I'm a storyteller, game designer, and independent game publisher. I'm also on Authortunities, and every week or so I publish a little blurb to help people get out of their writer's block to create scenes. And I'm really excited to be here tonight and just listen in.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. So when I first, I've been skipping through the DSM, taking a look at everything. And I was sort of looking forward to this one just because of the evocativeness of it, right? And I like to go right to the heart of these things. So right away, anything to do with sexual anything, it's the body, right? So that's Mars, as we've discussed previously. Mars is the ruling planet of the physical self. It's also the ruler of the ascendant, the rising sign. You might know what it is. And so I expected some sort of correlation with that. And depending on the severity of the dysfunction, if it's something that's happened your whole life versus, things ebb and flow. So it could be that you're going through a particularly hard transit where there's a lot going on with your Mars that can restrict it or, overwhelm it in some way. Because there can be a lot of different reasons for erectile dysfunction. Some psychological, some physical, and some spiritual, most likely, right? So I expected Mars, and then Mercury being the monkey mind that doesn't quit, it can go and go and go. You pair these two together, and I expect there to be some overthinking. So it can be like, well, okay, if all the blood's going to the brain because you're worried about your performance, right? You can see that being like, oh no. And that's cited as a common reason, like it's overthinking. Am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? What do they think? Oh my God, worrying, right? And so there's a Mercury aspect to this, a Virgo aspect. I'm not saying that all Virgos have erectile dysfunction issues, but it's that overthinking of things that is naturally there that could lead to such things. And even Gemini. So the Gemini aspect of Mercury gets bored easily. So it could just be that things aren't stimulating enough. Whether or not the heart loves the person that you're with, the mind may just be bored of the same old, same old. I think we don't discuss that enough in our society either. So just a couple of things to keep in mind there. Another one that could be involved, I could see, would be Saturn. So Saturn is a very restricting, domineering planet. Again, if things have to be just so. So I want things controlled, and if anything doesn't go exactly as how I wanted, then forget it. Like I go flaccid, or I'm just not interested. So that I could see that having a say in things. So that's what I expected just initially to see. And then I went looking for some celebrity charts that we'll get to in a little bit. But before I get to that, I'm going to pull up a little snippet from the DSM-5 on what it has to say. Okay, so we have, there's not a whole lot to it. We've got at least one of 3 of the following symptoms must be experienced on almost all or all occasions of sexual activity. Who knows what YouTube's going to do with this video? There's the word sex in it, right? Marked difficulty in obtaining an erection, maintaining one until completion, and decreased rigidity. So anything that's the dysfunction and can't be explained by a non-sexual mental disorder or as a consequence of severe relationship distress, right? Which is an interesting way to put it. Are you even happy with your partner? That may be a place to start, right? But that goes to the psychological factor, right? The overthinking that may be at play. For significant stressors is not attributable to effects such as substance or another medical condition. Like obviously, if you've got like a heart condition that's at play, restricting blood flow, like that's a different matter. This is just strictly looking at the psychological. And then, just to be fair, on the other side, we have female sexual interest arousal disorder, and it's just, not being interested in sexual activity, decreased thoughts or fantasies. Again, you get that Mercury element. With women, there may be a Neptune involvement, getting to the realm of fantasy. Maybe they can't access it for whatever reason. Men tend to be more, I've heard it put that our next orgasm begins right after the last one, like with the romancing and the wooing. Like we are very thought oriented. So I could see Mercury having a play in there too. In addition to just feeling safe and secure, so possibly the moon in this instance. So, and just no or reduced initiation of sex, and just not enjoying it as much. So it's basically the female equivalent. I interestingly, as I was looking for charts, did not find anything. I didn't go ripping apart the entire internet, but I didn't find anything initially on women talking about this, like celebrities anyway. So that's what
that's interesting.
So yeah, I found that a little interesting. I'm not sure what that is, but perhaps that can be explored later. Or, if I come across them again, I can do a little addendum. But for now, I have a couple of celebrities that can kind of go over what I was talking about. We've got Michael Douglas to start off with. And he is, he's a sex symbol, right, from the 80s. So it's like, for him to come out and talk about this, I think actually all of the celebrities that I'm talking about, I give a lot of kudos to him because it is something that needs to be discussed and not shamed, right? And so that's kind of my hope in doing this and not making a bunch of snide comments and whatever, like you might expect. But it can be very traumatizing and very, distressing on its own, which then adds, right? So if you have one time, then the next time, and the next time, and it starts to compound. So you get that worrying Mercury aspect to it. And here we see he's got his Mercury in Virgo, which I mentioned being this worrying, and conjunct Jupiter here. Now, Jupiter will blow up and expand things. So with Mercury, it can increase that worrying aspect of it. I should say also that Virgo rules health in general. So if there is a health related issue, this can kind of play into that as well. If it's just a matter of needing to lose weight or increase the exercise or something like that, that might also be seen from the Virgo placements as well as the Mars.
Would I have a question? Would like the pressure, feeling then the pressure, like blowing up things, would that be like Jupiter? Like feeling then the pressure of
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely could. Because in astrology, there's no good or bad, but it is high and low frequencies.
yeah.
So if you're in the lower frequency of the fear and the lack mentality, that can be blown up then.
Right.
But it just takes whatever it's got and expands it. And if it's
Yeah.
in a good vibration, then Jupiter's like, hey, it'll be fine, it'll all work out. If it's not, it'll be like, well, I don't know.
Okay.
So I can see that. He was brave to bring it up. So Jupiter also is the teacher, right?
Oh,
And for him, it would be in his 11th house of the public, of society. So I feel like having that, again, 80s sex symbol of Michael Douglas come out and talk about this, there's an incredibly healing, brave aspect to this that I just love. And I love him anyway, but learning is like, it's amazing. So Matthew Perry also had discussed this prior to his death. Now his was more alcohol linked, so there could have been a blood flow issue, right, along with a psychological aspect. But he also has a very busy Mercury in Virgo, right, with Pluto in this case, which can get very obsessive, very pinpointed. So putting that with Mercury can be like the overthinking aspect again, the doom thinking. Oh no, what if it's the worst? Interestingly, he's got Lilith here, and Lilith is the wild feminine energy. It's a very sexual female energy, right on his ascendant. In the next two charts I'm going to go through have this as well. So this is Lilith popping up here in a way that I didn't anticipate, but I guess also doesn't surprise me. But that's why it's fun to look at actual case studies and see what comes up. So, it could just be like him maybe having a hard time tapping into that aspect of himself, getting in touch with his feminine receptive nature. It could be any number of things, but it would be something that were he to be a client of mine, we could explore this energy, and try to work with it in healthy ways that could then help the body come back into alignment, as it were. In his case, he's also a Leo, and Leos love to be like the king, especially in the bedroom. Just gotta say. So, Hugh Hefner, good old Hugh. Again, him being able to talk about this kind of thing, I think, helps normalize it. You're like, well, man, if the Playboy Bunny guy has to take Viagra, maybe it's a discussion the rest of us can have, right? He's also got the Virgo energy. Again, overthinking that may be at play here. And Lilith there as well in his first house of the physical self. So there could be like a need to balance the feminine energies. In his case, there's this aspect of possibly exploiting women. Did that get to him on a level that maybe even he didn't realize? I don't know. I can only speculate. I'm not saying, but again, it would be something worth exploring. And we've also got his Mars, so that sexual drive in Aquarius, which is very open-minded energy. This is Mars wanting to explore all the things and try them. It doesn't matter how weird and creative we get, but also gets bored easily, right along with that Mercury. And there's that Jupiter conjunction, so it's blowing this up. So what can also happen, not only the natal chart tells us, but the frequency the person is in at the time matters. If it's the lower frequency, you might have problems. The higher, you might be fine. There could also be a transit happening with any number of things. And it can last from a couple of days if it's the moon to a couple of years if it's Pluto, So it really depends on what's going on that aspect. If like you're fine your whole life and all of a sudden now you're just having trouble, there may be something that an astrologer could take a look at in terms of what energies were at play, to help raise the frequency of those up and get you to raise other things up. Right? So let's see, anything else with Hugh? He's also got his ascendant here is across from Uranus, which can indicate possible nervous system issues that might need to be looked at too, again, depending on what's going on with the transits at the time. So, and then finally, Danny Trejo, who I was pleasantly surprised. I'm always pleasantly surprised to see Danny Trejo. He pops up all over the place.
He's in like everything.
He really
I
is.
love Danny Trejo.
It was like Far Cry 5 or Far Cry 6. I can't remember which one, but he's in that video game. It's like as himself, like
So cool.
So if you haven't played that one and you're a Danny Trejo fan, I highly recommend it.
Oh, well.
So in his case, he's got his ascendant again with Mercury, right? So this is that tendency to overthink with the physical body. He's also got his Mars with Rahu, which can get very obsessive too. So that's kind of double whammy on that. And in his case, Venus is in there. So there could be like this feeling of wanting to make sure that he's fair to his partner, maybe overthinking that, which is interesting. And it's in Taurus, which Taurus rules the sensual self. It's it's the best way to put it. The tactile sensation. So sex goes to many different places, emotional, spiritual, but Taurus would be that I just like how that feels when you do that twirly thing with your tongue. So that's it's important. It kind of doubles down on that for him, that the tactile sensations be there. So it would be like taking a look at all of those energies combined. And if there's any transits going on there. For example, he's had Uranus in this area for the past couple of years. That can suddenly bring up issues, that might need to be worked through. And changing of energies, it's like lightning strikes on all of this stuff. So sometimes it's working great, and sometimes not, that kind of thing. Yeah, so for somebody who's got a Taurus ascendant, it could be very, very much distressing. I mean, for anybody going through this, it can be, but like for somebody who kind of lives and breathes that sensational life, to lose that, and then to come out and talk about it again, very brave, very open. I give a tremendous amount of credit. So there we have it. It kind of bears out. And his Lilith is with Neptune here in Virgo. So there's just that interesting little connection there again, that just sort of showing up in this energy, interplaying with it in an interesting way. And I'm not sure. I'd kind of like to explore that maybe. So and there we go.
I find it interesting that a lot of females don't talk about like problems that they have. I mean, celebrities, because you get a group of girlfriends around, you talk about everything, and sometimes it is about, I'm just not
into
it. Yeah. So but maybe women don't want to reveal it because
I'm certainly not an I'm certainly not an expert on female sexual desire, their ability to sexually be active or desired or to be desired. I would think though that women have my experience has been that women, and what I read is that women have a much different arousal template and pattern than men do, right? So I think it's pretty scientifically verified. Men can reach an orgasm rather quickly, and it's a different experience for a man than it is for a woman. And there's typically, from what I'm reading and my own experience, is that with a woman, her relationship and the emotion and being cherished, I'll say, right, is a big part of the fulfillment of a sexual bond with a woman. A woman, where a man, not that a man doesn't want that as well, but there's a physical difference in how we both achieve that. And not that orgasm is everything, right? That's just one part of a sexual experience, right? There's more than one way to be sexual. There's the hugging and kissing, and there's so many other things that can happen. I'm enjoying listening to this, Nikki. Thank you for being brave and putting that in on the internet. I am involved in it. To give one last thing about the male point of view, listening to this is I enjoy hearing the different predilections that people may have based on their astrology, right? Which could, can cast them. It's kind of like casting a ship. Everybody has a ship that's built a little differently, and it may wander to the waters in a different way. One thing that I have read a lot about, due to a background in abuse that had happened when I was younger, is that there's trauma that occurs in people's lives. And there's a really good doctor by the name of Dr. Patrick Carnes, who came up with the word arousal template. And he really studied a lot about how abuse and trauma and addictions can affect people's lives from a sexual perspective. And I just would put a little plug in there for you to take a look at Patrick Carnes' work, because, he looked at domestic violence, and he looked at dysfunctional family of origin issues and religious abuse, and all the things you can imagine, that incest, sexual abuse, and stuff like that. So he really set a really big benchmark in the whole psychology side of your discussion. He's one of the luminaries, if you will, in sexual unwanted sexual behaviors and dysfunction, mainly due to addictions. But he looked at a lot. So I'd encourage you to take a look at his work. It's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, that's an excellent resource.
Cool.
Thank you. And for that take on things too, because one thing I didn't go into too much is Scorpio energy is this psychological. Scorpio deals with trauma and psychological baggage. Is Pisces, so they both tend. Scorpio is the one that transforms. It's like the phoenix energy. I've been through this, but it doesn't define me. I'm going to take it and become bigger and brighter from it.
Yeah, and obviously my comments were more about the psychological aspect of sexual performance, not the physical, the medical part of it. But, when you have a past trauma or something like that, it can really affect how your relationships build, right? And how you feel safe with a certain partner, etc. So
I say that and this is a very Scorpio thing too. I have Scorpio energy. This is why I'm not afraid to just go right into these subjects.
I love it.
But it's, if I can't feel you in my soul, I don't want you in my bed. Like it's that. So Scorpio gets the reputation of being like, ooh, the sexy sign, right? And I'm not going to dissuade that, but it's it's more than that. It's deeper. It's emotional, right? Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Thank you. And so it's you know, it's a point well taken, Stephen, that it's got layers and layers to it. And I think my focus on the Mercury was just the overthinking, which can come from many different places, I should have said.
True.
Right. So it can come from just the moment with that person, anything that you're having, or past that, you know, you're bringing up into the moment. So you're no longer there and present.
Mm-hmm. From an astrologer's perspective, would you ever look at like a couple, like let's say a boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner, two partners? Would you look at both of their signs together to see if there was any sort of natural, you know, hey, you guys are really going to get along well, basically, based on what I'm seeing, or hey, these are the things you need to worry about.
Sure. Yeah, I do that all the time. It's a lot of fun and very helpful, you know, in setting the understanding of, you know, each other's energies of this is important to me. So if you have people who are opposite, let's say, you know, I talked about the Scorpio, the soul, the emotional component is there. Well, the opposite of that is Taurus, and that's very earth and grounded, and they just care about the pleasure in the moment, right? There's that sense. Not that they don't have other aspects that can bring more emotion into it, but just as a base energy, it's more about the body pleasure, whereas the Scorpio is the soul. And so understanding that about your partner can help you, you know, find that equilibrium or go your separate ways. You know, if you got somebody who isn't for snuggling, you know, and that's really important to you, it's best to find that out. So it can be hugely helpful in them creative ways. You take a look at your Venus, for example, will show you what you like to give and take in relationships. And so if there's, you know, an incompatibility there, it's like the love language would be another way to put it.
That's what I was going to mention. Love language is a real common term that's now used.
So a lot of things are, you know, whether it's the DSM-5 defining it and working with it in that way, or if it's astrology defining it, working with it that way. The Myers-Briggs personality test, right? That'll tell you some things that can be helpful. Any of these things, the goal is to help the person understand themselves, and then in getting more comfortable in the self, that frees the mind up too. Then you're not overthinking, you're more, right? So taking that spiritual approach to just even self-understanding can take that pressure off just a bit, you know. As can diet, exercise, you know, all the things. And maybe the little blue pill if you need it sometimes, you know. I remember seeing that with age, this can become a factor, and I think that may have, it can have anything to do with anything, right? There is no, it's a very hard thing to pinpoint. You know, even in astrology, I can look at things and see like, okay, you've got this transit going on, so it's going to last until this time frame, and here's the best way to work with it, you know. But it's not a guarantee. There could be other things going on, you know. So same thing with a psychologist. They can only start to pick apart what they can in the moment, and then things start rolling and other things open up usually, right? So my hope is that this has helped somebody watching to kind of understand what they're going through a little bit more, normalize it so that it can be healed and dealt with. We can't keep this stuff in the shadows all the time. So, all right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Stephen?
Oh, thank you for addressing a very under talked about, you know, like a stigmatized topic. I enjoyed listening to you. If I wanted to kind of look at my own horoscope and see what I need, could you talk more about how you help other people do that?
Oh, sure. Well, if you go to phoenixrose.net, you can get a personal reading with me, and then I'll do like a one-on-one video thing, and go over your chart with you, and I take a teaching approach because I want you to know
Mhm.
what your chart is, and that can be a lot of fun. Otherwise, there are places like astrotheme.com, which is where I got the charts that I pulled up. I like the little colorfulness of those
Those are
ones.
nice. Mhm.
And they have a list of celebrities and stuff. So anybody who's studying astrology, it can be a great resource for getting to know these aspects. And you can just put in your birth information, your birth date, time, and location, and then it will pull you up and get you started. Like it's a good place to begin if you didn't want to go right to an astrology, just kind of want to look and dabble. That's a resource that I like. And cafeastrology.com is another one.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. Yeah. So, and well, let's see. I think I should do my sign off then, right? Oh yeah, no, I was gonna ask. I remember. So there's something else with Stephen. So I'm gonna edit this out. So Stephen, where can people find you?
Well, I have a website called schwartzgames.com. And if you're on Authortunities, you can see there's a Small Town Tales there. I am focusing mainly on helping people tell their story right now. And I'm working on a couple projects, the Small Town Tales, which you've been involved in. And I'm also working on a different genre of that looks at a historical view of powerful women in the past, which I'm really excited about. There's some really fascinating, I think women don't get, if somebody conquered a country or something like that, it'd be all about the men. But there's a lot of women who were rulers back in the Middle Ages as well. And they're typically cast as, oh, she's a bad person. But really, she wasn't. She ruled a country and she did a lot of things a lot different than the men. And so the men, of course, didn't like the way she ruled. So they wrote the history. But it's an awesome responsibility to try to do the research and then bring her story to life, and then turn that not only just into a story, but maybe make it into an episode that people talk about in building their own story. So I'm working on something like that right now. So if you're familiar with Small Town Tales, imagine you're now set in the 12th century, and the backstory is that your sister, your half sister, is a queen of a certain province, and you married a guy and he died, and now you have to run this country, and you know a little bit about the history. How are you going to do that? And the deception and the challenges that the woman faced. Amazing. I think it's just a really fascinating story. So I'm not sure if I'm going to turn it into a novel or a game, but I'm going to go for it full bore on the research side, because I'm just fascinated by powerful, just self-determined, independent women who had to face incredible odds in a time where they many of them died in childbirth, and they were subjugated to very poor conditions. I think it's a fascinating story. It's going to be about the first queen of Portugal, and she was the very first queen of Portugal, and she ended up getting dethroned by her own son, which is really fascinating story in itself. So anyway, that's what I'm working on.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. And maybe you could do both the novel and the game.
Yeah, I think I will. Or maybe I have a game about something called bittersweet empathy. I'm not sure. I have to think about that.
Yes, that is a possibility for sure.
I would love to do a game about that.
I have been thinking about that, so I'm definitely not saying no, but just not right this second.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, you have to have priorities, otherwise you don't have a priority.
You get it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I look forward to it. I'm all accounts, the bittersweet empathy version of the Small Town Tales, and learning more about the Queen of Portugal. Yeah, you're right. Like women,
you know,
It's
like
almost like
Mary
we need
Queen.
another history written, right? We do.
Yeah, yeah,
So much of it
yeah.
was
And
lost out.
there's a few really good historical writers like Mary Queen of Scots. You know, she was cast as a very insignificant person. Well, she was the queen consort of France. She had the throne to England. She was the queen of Scotland. She was exiled. I mean, it's an amazing story. They've had a couple movies about her, but that's her story really inspired me. It was just such a, I mean, she spoke 3 or 4 languages. I mean, imagine, you know, and here she's fighting between Catholics and Protestants on top of it. Just an amazing story.
It is. It is. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me and in this very evocative topic that we went over today. And I am Nikki with 11th Host Publishing. You can join me every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time in the Authortunities Hub. I've got links below. So if you want to be in on the discussion and talk about what you're up to and, you know, get in on the next one, that's the place to go. And if you'd like a reading with me, I'll have that link below too, and we can take a look at what's going on in your chart, sexual or not. Although maybe that should be a niche of mine. I wonder sometimes. All right. Until then, Happy New Year, everybody, and have a good night.